Ladies and gentlemen, we are back for another movie review. This is an anime film that you do not want to miss, and we're talking about Suzume. Now, this movie from this amazing director, if you've heard of Your Name, Weathering with You, it's the same exact director, and what he pours into um, from a passion standpoint, from a personal standpoint, into this project, it's kind of unlike anything I've seen in a very long time. But me and Ty are going to dissect Suzume, what it meant for us, what we thought about it, and break it down. What's going on, Ty?
What up, folk? How you doing? What's going on, good people? Good to see y'all again out there in the internet world. And we about to cover this amazing anime. I cannot wait.
Yeah, I'm excited because just for the sake of time, Ty's never seen Your Name. He's never seen Weathering with You, and this is his first introduction to this amazing director. From an art style standpoint, Ty, what did you think about the visuals and the animation and attention to detail? That's one of the things that the director is known for, but with this one, I mean, I was curious your perspective.
So we have had the fortunate piece of actually watching both versions. So I'm glad we didn't do I'm glad we didn't do this like right after the first time we watched it. I wanted to go back and catch all the details. And I can say this because I've had some time to digest it, but the visuals are amazing. I mean, there's no other word really to describe it. Everything from how he shows water to how he shows um, background, foreground, surrounding area. Even the first time we've seen a time lapse in an anime, just beautifully done. So, yep, kudos to Makoto for that. Really well done.
Yeah, with I think with one of the things with Makoto that I really love about not just even the animation, but his sound design. Like one of the main characters gets transformed into a chair, and every single time the chair is moving, you can hear the little creak, and you it sounds like wood knocking on different surfaces, down to the water, down to the car. Like it's the sound design mixed with the environment. And another thing that we talked about, Ty, was the camera angles. He
Oh yeah.
chooses to do sometimes 360 camera angles, sometimes like a panned out shot where the person's looking to the left or to the right. And because this is a natural disaster mixed with supernatural elements, it is utmost important with this story. But we're going to go ahead and kind of break down the story for you guys a little bit. So Suzume is 17 years old. She's a junior, and she's living with her aunt. And one day she just kind of rides her bike down the road, and she happens to see this guy. She thinks he's cute. She thinks she kind of recognizes him, and he kind of asked her for directions to what some ruins are. So she was like, "Yeah, here you go." And she kind of goes and acts like she's going to go to school. But then she's like, "Maybe I should go and talk to him." And so she goes to try to find him. And instead of finding him, she finds the ruins, but she finds this door just in the middle of nowhere. She opens the door, and behold, this other world, which is this supernatural world, which is very fascinating. Um, I so when we initially watched this, I had never seen any of the trailers, so I didn't know what it was about. Um, Watching both the sub and the dub, I think is really good because I think the voice acting for the dub is actually really freaking good. But some of the times when you're actually watching the sub and you're so focused on like what the dialogue is, you're missing the environmental stuff and the visual stuff. And so it's either a trade-off. So for you, Ty, like with watching it both times, what did you get out of it second time around that you didn't get first time around? Or vice
So
versa?
I'm glad you bring that up because that's one of the things that I kind of focused on. It gave me a chance to, I mean, because nowadays, let's be real, even with English dub or even English just speaking media, people are just used to having the subtitles on. No, I don't know why that became a thing, but even I've kind of adopted it. So having watching it the second time around without any subtitles, it really does give you a chance to really get immersed into the actual story without, and actually hearing the dialogue and hearing the emotion, hearing the moments where there's a lot of emotion behind the words, hearing where there's a lot fed into the dialogue, but also the characters, um, facial expressions, the things you see, like, as we get a little further, there's something particular about Suzume's eyes that I didn't notice before because I was so focused on the dialogue and the sub that we noticed in the dub. And we catch little things like just before like disaster strikes and she's aware of it, you see something in her eyes. And then the one time you don't see something in her eyes, when she gives that kind of shocked appearance, it's like a moment of peace and of happiness near the end. But yeah, I the second time around, it's one of the few times I can say about any kind of Japanese anime format or media where I can say the English dub is probably the better way to watch it because you really want to see all of that, you know, emotion, all of that feeling. I mean, unless you can naturally, the Japanese language and can watch it without subtitles, do that. But if you're like us who do not know the language and watch English dub, I would say watch it that way to really get all the emotion. Yeah.
Yeah, I second that because the first time watching, it was kind of late, and I was like, "Wow, this is really engaging," but it's like so much going on. I feel like I'm missing certain details visually, and I'm paying attention. And I'm just reading. And one of the things that's very fascinating is that he's so expressive with the character face animations. Like there are moments where Suzume's reacting, because she's trying to hold it together but she's
Mhm.
really not in a good place. Whereas like a character like Sota, he's always clear cut, but there are certain things that when something happens to him in this movie, and he kind of has to be expressive without being expressive, it's the animation for that is essential. You need to be
Yeah.
focused and honed in on what he's doing. There's a moment where when he goes to sleep, it cracks me up every time. Up until the midway part of the movie, and you're realizing, oh, this is why he's falling asleep. And
Mhm.
I think the second time around, I also was hit with a lot of emotional weight because
Yeah.
the director, the catalyst of this movie is the tragedy in Japan in 2011. In 2011, there was a tsunami and there was a earthquake that befall Japan. I'll show you guys a few images of it. Um, and the reason why he wanted to make this, what it seems like, is it was not a need that he had to kind of go back and rehash the past. It was more so like going and moving forward. This very much so is touching on your past trying to meet with your present and how you move forward. How do you go past such tragedy and also actually processing it? How do you deal with that? Because one of the things that Suzume and Sota are, they're closers. Their whole focus is to go and find a gate. And once they get to the gate, they have to close it. If they don't, something will come out and a natural disaster, wherever those doors are, those gates happen, a natural disaster will occur. And so it is their goal to try to keep and prevent these natural disasters from happening. You just don't know how interwoven that is with every single character. Every single character is tied to how this is going to kind of progress throughout. But I love how he wrote it because it was kind of like this little cat right here. As much as he is cute or she is cute, they are equally emotionally weighted because they make decisions that have drastic stakes for everybody around them. And you start to question all the different people that you see, even in this shot, like there's consequences to every person's actions. And I love that. Like the smallest and the largest of characters, there's a consequence of it. I think the thing that I loved, there was a sequence, I'm not gonna spoil it for you guys, it's not a spoiler for you, but a sequence where she had her aunt and her having a conversation in the rain, and a lot of emotional weight was coming out, but at the same exact time, it was a lot of honesty. And I think that there's always that blurred line of like, all right, is that too much or is that immediately what needs to happen? And all of a sudden, like something supernatural happens. Is one of the most scariest moments in the movie, but it was also the turning point as well. And I love that there are moments like that throughout. This was a great film, to be honest. But go ahead, Ty. I'll let you go.
So what I find, I definitely agree with that. What I find interesting is that this whole movie is about processing grief and loss. And what I find interesting is with this particular movie, these characters have all pretty much moved on from this particular event. This is now years after the fact. But this chance encounter between these two characters that you see now basically take them back to basically truly process the grief and loss of what occurred, you know, 11, 12 years prior. So every character, every main character that's in here, the ones that the movie focuses on, are truly have truly now had to come back and process the grief. It's like they moved through it, but they never truly processed it. And as the role that one of the characters plays, which is called a closer, and also Suzume helping in that, it's almost like they're both closing and processing their own grief so they can truly move on. Because some people will just move on and not process the grief or loss of someone or an event or some disaster, some form of tragedy in their lives. They'll just move forward and never really seek, you know, whether it's therapy, whether it's someone to just listen, someone that they can trust to actually get through that and get to the point of healing. This particular movie basically pulls them all back and says, hey, yeah, it's 12 years after the fact, but you actually haven't truly processed this. And it's built, you've just literally built this house of cards on top of all that grief. And in this one fleeting moment, the whole house of cards come down and you have really no choice but to face all this grief. And that's one thing I actually love about how Makoto has done this particular film. I definitely plan to go back and see his other two films, but this one, if I was to ever be introduced into a great director's media, I'd want it to be something like this because this was just amazing.
Yeah, Makoto Shinka, the way that the last 10 to 15 minutes of this movie, the second time watching it, it hit me, man. I was emotionally compromised. And it's not just because it was a tender moment, it was the build up and the way that he kind of threaded every single character leading up to that moment. And I mean, that is real raw passion that from the line of dollar, I want to describe the scene, but I can't because it will spoil it.
Yeah.
But it surrounds moving forward. And it's a real revelation that kind of happens. And I think you can take that revelation that the characters are getting in that moment and you can be able to incorporate it into your own life. Anybody that has lived through a natural disaster or serious loss or is currently going through a traumatic situation, they can take that and look at the moment that they are right now and realize that later on, that's not going to be where you are right now, that there is hope moving forward. And I love that revelation and understanding that he's trying to convey in so many beautiful ways, whether it is the animation style, whether it is the great lines of dialogue. But I think at his core, like he's taking tragedy and finding a way of scoping it into something more. And that's kind of hard to do because a lot of people, they try to like overdo it. Or they'll kind of like glamorize the tragedy and the death. And I don't I don't really remember seeing any death in this movie, realistically. Like it's not death is not something that's glamorized. It's more so about moving forward. And I think that that's a very fascinating feat to do in a film like this. But I don't really have any negatives on it, and I think I loved it more the second time around. Even the English dub was great. Like the English
Yeah.
did a great job. Josh Keaton was, I think he was Sato.
Yep.
Did an amazing job, but everybody around the board, whether it's the Japanese cast or the English dub cast, they did an amazing job. I don't really have any negatives. It's a 10 for me. But what
Yeah.
are your closing thoughts on this one?
So what I find interesting is I'm wondering if this is how Makoto processed his grief regarding this event. Because you can't say we all hadn't been affected by that. Like we all felt something for this tragedy that happened 12 years ago.
Yeah.
But I think partially this is his own version of it. And I also think that without spoiling too much, the enemy that they were dealing with were the entities that were lost but felt unfinished. Like I think they kept dealing with the same problem over and over because it was a combination of, well, this was before my time. How is it that I'm not here, but you get to be here? And I think it was just a combination of all that. And whenever an opportunity opened to push through, the enemy pushed through. And in the wake of that, there was tragedy should it truly succeed. But I'm thinking when I see this whole thing, what I think about is there's another series I'm watching, and I'm not going to mention it here because we're talking about Suzume, but there's another series I'm watching, and one of the things that an character says in there is that the one thing they forgot is that you cannot speed up the process to healing. And when they say that, it's the first thing that kind of came to my mind watching this movie. You can't speed up the process to healing, but more than that, you have to actually face it in order to get to the actual true healing. There's acceptance and then there's healing. When you've accepted something, you doesn't mean you've truly healed. You've just moved on, but never actually. It's almost kind of like you just left your trash or something by the side of the road, like you littered it and you don't want to be bothered with it. But when you actually take time to make sure that the trash is in its proper receptacle and knowing that it's going to go to where it needs to go, it's like you're facing that actual grief. And once you do that and you go through the hardship, you'll get to the other end of healing. And with this movie, it's not easy because it wasn't easy, but when they got there, it was great. They were much better than they were. So for me, it is most certainly, without any hesitation, a 10 out of 10. Absolutely wonderful movie. I can watch this any day of the week and twice on Sunday, and I'll be good.
Yeah, there's something else that we just got done looking at the movie, so I'm gonna bring this up. But main character, Suzume, she has this. She keeps opening doors, right? She'll open doors, but she'll never close them. I just realized that is a full metaphor. Like there's a reason why she couldn't stop, like opening doors and never closing them. And if you want to kind of take that into consideration, a person dealing with grief or dealing with loss, like they haven't truly closed the door on how they really feel because they're still searching for something else and they're not processing it. And that is throughout this movie, and it's so fascinating. Just small little revelations that you're getting. There's certain symbolisms as well that we can't really talk about because it would be spoiling the movie. But if you guys are enticed by this conversation, let us know. Maybe we'll try to do a spoiler discussion on it because there's a lot of threads to talk about from the beginning all the way to the end. And it was good.
Literally and figuratively, there were threads. That literally and figuratively there were threads. And actually, I do like because the threads were almost like connected targets without saying too much. But you knew that when those threads were there, it was right on the brink, you know. And sometimes that's what we do. We wait till the last minute to the 11th hour, you know, 11:59 and 59 seconds before we actually face what we need to face and accept things. So it's, if y'all want us to do a spoiler review, I'd be down for it. But make sure you put that in the comments, you know, and subscribe to Team JVS and let them know.
Yeah, please do, because my head keeps on spinning the more I think about this movie. And so shout out to this amazing man. This was an amazing feat of a film. Thank you so much for sharing this with the world. And I can't wait to see your next film. We're gonna go, ladies and gentlemen, because I feel like I'm just gonna keep on rambling, and
because there's definitely some emotional damage, and we definitely don't want to go that route yet. We saved that for the spoiler review.
Yeah, I really am just trying to hold it all in. Man, we gotta talk after this time. All right, we're out, y'all.
Peace.
Falling off the top